All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking some seriously intense predictions from a prominent political commentary source regarding Pakistan. According to this source, we are looking at a highly volatile month ahead. They argue that the current political system is literally hurtling toward a dead end. So we're going to decode these claims, map out the timeline, and really break down the economic, political, and social pressures that are supposedly converging to make this a massive month of challenges for the government.
To make sense of it all, we're going to quickly run through distractions versus realities, trace some high-stakes political timelines, break down a pretty scary upcoming budget, look at the big economic claims, track nationwide protests, and finally, dive into the leadership dilemma.
First up, distractions versus realities, shifting the focus.
So the source sets up this really fascinating premise right out of the gate: engineered distractions versus systemic realities. Think about it. On one hand, we're being bombarded with media noise, right? Things like share of Zal Marwat's legal petitions, rumors of a forward bloc in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa, or, just everyday celebrity gossip. Well, the source argues these are intentionally amplified to pull your attention away from 20 very real compounding challenges hitting the administration all at once. Everything from severe economic crises to looming political showdowns.
Moving on to political timelines, high-stakes dates.
The source lays out a very specific timeline focused entirely on former Prime Minister Imran Khan. Notice the dates: June 2nd, 8th, 15th, 22nd, and 29th. These aren't just random days. The speaker identifies them as scheduled days for meetings with Khan at the Adiala facility. According to the source, each of these dates acts as a weekly pressure cooker. They argue that the PTI party is going to use these exact days to intensify their demands for Khan's transfer to a hospital for treatment and to restore regular family meetings. Basically, it creates this recurring, weekly headache for the administration.
But hey, it's not just those weekly meetings. The source highlights a whole cascade of other political pressure points stacking up. You've got the Gilgit-Baltistan elections on June 7th. Then, PTI-affiliated lawyers are allegedly gearing up for 4 major protests right outside the Supreme Court and Islamabad High Court. On top of that, the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government is planning a 3-day protest over their provincial share of the NFC award, and that's supposed to culminate right inside the capital's red zone. And if that wasn't enough, there are rumblings, again according to the source, that key figures like Mahmoud Khanachakzai and Assad Kaysar might just resign from the National Assembly. Obviously, that would trigger a massive political crisis.
Next up, a scary upcoming budget, anticipating June 5th.
Now, to validate just how harsh this budget might be, the source does something really interesting. They quote Saleh Zafir, who is widely known as a pro-government journalist. When even a staunch supporter of the administration goes on television and admits that for the first time he is feeling literally terrified of the upcoming budget, well, it definitely emphasizes the severity of the financial pain expected after June 5th.
So, what's causing all this terror? Well, the source points to some massive, devastating price hikes slated for everyday consumer goods and utilities. We're talking solar panels, electric vehicles, a universal hike in sales tax, higher electricity tariffs, and jumping costs for petrol and diesel. The speaker makes a pretty bold claim here that since April 2022, absolutely zero economic targets have been met by the administration. They argue that every daily economic report released leading up to the end of the financial year on June 30th is basically going to serve as a charge sheet against the government's performance.
Let's look at key economic claims. By the numbers.
The crucial takeaway here is this absolutely staggering figure, 5,000 billion rupees. According to the source, this is the current circular debt sitting on gas and electricity alone. It's like a giant financial black hole, and it anchors their entire argument that the current system is totally unsustainable.
And honestly, the massive financial claims don't stop there. The source breaks it down further, stating that while 4,300 billion rupees were collected in petroleum levies over the past 4 years, the government expects to extract an astonishing 10,780 billion in the next 5. That's a huge jump. They also highlight a mind-blowing $40 billion, which is over 8,300 billion rupees, paid out to independent power producers over the last 8 years. Add to that the claim that farmers have suffered over 6,000 billion rupees in losses over just the past 4 years. The sheer weight of these numbers is exactly what the source uses to argue that the economy is nearing a total breaking point. To really hammer this home, the source makes this highly specific, almost absurd claim that the total foreign direct investment into the entire country over the past year was actually less than the cost of a private jet recently purchased by political leader Maryam Nawaz. Now, regardless of the exact accounting there, The source uses this stark contrast to paint a picture of what they view as an absolute failure to attract outside capital.
Which brings us to nationwide protests planned, mounting street power.
All of that economic pain we just talked about, well, it's translating directly into planned civil unrest. Just look at how quickly these events are stacking up in the first half of the month alone. On June 5th, government employees are set to protest. On June 9th, the Awami Action Committee in Azad Kashmir has called a strike. The very next day, June 10th, farmers have announced plans to literally surround the Punjab Assembly. The source lays this out to show a relentless, overlapping wave of street power confronting the administration.
And it seriously doesn't stop there. Traders are calling nationwide meetings to push back against the economic conditions. A huge gathering of the Ale Toshi community is planned at Minar-e, Pakistan on June 13th. The source even cryptically mentions intelligence about 6 so-called smart events planned by the TTP. Combine all of this highly organized unrest with severe environmental stressors, like extreme heat waves, brutal electricity load shedding, and crippling water shortages allegedly linked to the suspension of the Indus Water Treaty, and the source argues you have the perfect storm for nationwide societal anger.
Finally, let's look at the leadership dilemma. Will they compromise?
Here's where we get to the source's overarching and, frankly, pretty cynical theory about why massive protests in Pakistan often fail to achieve their goals. They define this as the phenomenon of compromised leadership. The speaker argues that, logically speaking, no government could survive for even a single day against the unified numbers of farmers, traders, and government employees combined. But according to the source, the real tragedy of these movements is that their leadership is often compromised. They accept payoffs, succumb to leverage, or cut backroom deals, basically selling out their followers and causing the whole movement to collapse.
But there is one glaring exception to this rule. The source points directly to the Awami Action Committee in Azad Kashmir. According to the speaker, this recent movement succeeded and actually forced the government to surrender and meet their demands, precisely because their leadership did not sell out. The source holds this up as proof that when leadership stays strong and uncompromised, the sheer volume of public pressure is just too much for the administration to withstand.
So that brings us to our final, ultimate question raised by our source material today. With massive economic pressure, planned protests from multiple sectors, and a high-stakes political timeline all crashing together this month, will these upcoming June movements actually push through and force systemic change? Or will their leadership, as the source fears, just fold and compromise once again? That really is the crux of the volatility predicted for this month. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. I hope mapping out these claims gave you a much clearer, structured view of the complex challenges being discussed. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll catch you next time.